Listen up. Charlie Munger highly recommends this book. So, I spent the last few days absolutely demolishing every piece of Benjamin Franklin material I can get my hands on. We're talking about 800 pages of primary source material, his autobiography, his letters, his business records, his scientific papers, everything. And I took 100 plus pages of notes. And I'm about to compress all of that down into just the operating principles that matter for you and me, investing, building companies, and creating something great. Now, here's what blew my mind. Everyone thinks they know Benjamin Franklin, kite, lightning, founding father, but that's complete BS. The real Benjamin Franklin was the most methodical, systematic entrepreneur in American history. While everyone else was winging it, this maniac was building systems, optimizing processes, and creating leverage that would make a modern tech founder weep with envy. Now, the core idea, the thing that explains everything Franklin ever accomplished, is what I'm calling systematic leverage. This dude didn't just work hard, he worked smart. He didn't just get lucky, he engineered luck. He didn't just network, he built systematic relationship engines that generated compound returns for decades. Now, there's a sentence that appears in multiple forms throughout his writing, but the version that stopped me in my tracks is this: an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. That's not just some feel-good quote. That's his entire operating system. This man treated learning, relationships, and systems the same way modern entrepreneurs treat code, as scalable assets that generate returns while you sleep. I'm going to come back to this mantra 2 more times because once you see how Benjamin applied this principle to everything, his business, his science, his politics, his personal development, you'll never think about building companies the same way again or investing. Now, this is Franklin's algorithm, learning physics of business. Benjamin starts as an apprentice to his brother James, who owns a printing shop in Boston. Now, here's where most people would just put their head down and learn the trade. Not Franklin. Watch what happens. The standard apprentice learns by doing what they're told. Franklin reverse engineers the entire system. He's 16 years old and he's studying every single piece of communication that comes through the shop. He's analyzing writing styles. He's breaking down persuasion techniques. He's figuring out the economics of the printing business. But here's the insane part. He creates a systematic self-education program. He's making himself anonymous writing samples and comparing them to professional writers. He's timing himself. He's creating feedback loops. This is exactly what Josh Waitzkin does in the art of learning. He's building a learning system, not just learning skills. The physics here is brutal. Everyone else is competing on current skills. Franklin is competing on learning velocity. He's building a compounding advantage that will accelerate over time. Now, James Franklin is apparently a dick to work for. He's hitting Benjamin, treating him like crap, typical 1700s apprentice abuse. Now, most people would either quit or suffer through it. Franklin does something completely different. Now, this is principle number 2. Convert constraints into advantages. Franklin studies his indenture contract. Yeah, the legal document that basically makes him a slave to his brother for 7 years. He finds a loophole. Technically, his brother can't publish under his own name because he's censored by the Boston authorities. So Benjamin secretly starts writing under the pseudonym Silence Do Good. These articles become the most popular content in Boston Gazette. His brother has no idea his 16-year-old apprentice is the star writer. Benjamin is simultaneously learning the business, building his reputation, and preparing his escape route. This is identical to what Brian Chesky did when he was broke and couldn't afford to go to design conferences. Instead of complaining, he figured out how to attend by redesigning the conference's website for free. Same pattern, constraint becomes competitive advantage. Now, Franklin breaks his indenture and moves to Philadelphia with basically nothing. But he's not starting from zero. He's starting with a systematic knowledge of the printing business, a proven ability to create compelling content, and a reputation, even if it's anonymous, for quality work. Now, this is where Benjamin becomes Benjamin. He's 17 years old, walking through Philadelphia with 3 rolls under his arm, looking like a homeless. 2 years later, he owns the most profitable printing business in the colony. How the hell does that happen? Well, this is the third principle. Systems create exponential returns. Listen to this carefully, because this is where Franklin separates himself from every other entrepreneur of his era. He doesn't just start a printing business. He systematically identifies every inefficiency in the existing market and builds superior processes. The existing printers in Philadelphia, they're craftsmen. They think like craftsmen. They wake up, they print whatever jobs come in, they go home. No systems, no optimization, no leverage. Franklin approaches printing like a modern SaaS entrepreneur approaches software. He's looking for recurring revenue, scalable processes, and systematic competitive advantage. First move, he systematically studies every printer in the city. He maps their capabilities, their pricing, their client relationships, their operational constraints. This is the same thing Jeff Bezos did before launching Amazon. He methodically analyzed the book distribution industry until he understood it better than people who'd been in it for decades. Now, the second move, he doesn't compete on price. He competes on reliability and speed. While other printers are promising delivery in 2 weeks and delivering it in 4, Benjamin is promising 1 week and delivering in 5 days. He's creating systems for project management that won't be formalized for another 200 years. Now, here's the third move, and this is where it gets insane. He starts vertical integration. Instead of just being a printer, he's systematically capturing more of the value chain. He starts a newspaper. He becomes a publisher. He creates distribution networks. He's building what we'll now call a media empire. But he's going to do it with methodical, systematic precision. Now, by the age of 24, Benjamin has built the most successful printing operation in Philadelphia. Most entrepreneurs would be satisfied. They'd enjoy the success, maybe expand locally, live a comfortable life. Franklin looks at what he's built and thinks, how do I systemize and scale this? And this is where principle 4 comes in. Create systems that generate value without your presence. Here's what he does that's absolutely brilliant. He takes his best employees and set them up as independent printers in other cities. But, and this is crucial, he maintains partial ownership and provides them with systematic operational knowledge. This is franchising 150 years before Ray Kroc. This is platform thinking 200 years before Jeff Bezos. And Franklin is creating a network of business that generate returns for him without requiring his direct involvement. He sets up his printing partnership in Charleston, New York, Lancaster. Each one is run by someone he trained in his systematic methods. Each one sends him a percentage of profits. Each one expands his network and influence. Remember this mantra: an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Benjamin invested in teaching people his systems. The knowledge compounds. The relationships compound. The financial returns compound. Understand now why Charlie Munger recommends this book. Now, this is identical to what also Sam Walton talked about and what he did with his Walmart managers. He systematically trained people in his methods. Then he gave them ownership stakes in new locations. Same physics, a different century. Now we get to the part of Franklin's story that most biographies completely miss. Everyone knows he started the first public library, the first volunteer fire department, the first public hospital. They frame these as civic-minded activities. That's BS. These were systematic networking building exercises. And this is where Principle 5 comes in. Build infrastructure that benefits everyone, but positions you at the center. So, Benjamin didn't start these organizations because he was a nice guy. Well, maybe he was a nice guy, but that's not why he did it. He started them because he understood something that most entrepreneurs still don't get. The most powerful position in any network is the position that makes everyone else more successful. Look at the physics. The public library. Benjamin needs access to books for his continuous learning system. Instead of buying books individually, expensive, limited selection, he convinces 50 other people to pool their money to create a shared resource. Everyone benefits, but Benjamin gets to design the system, and he has the most to gain because he's the most systematic user. The fire department, Benjamin owns the property. Fire insurance doesn't exist. Instead of just accepting the risk, he organizes neighbors to create mutual protection. Everyone benefits, but Benjamin gets to position himself as the leader, and he reduces his personal risk while building relationships with other property owners. Now the hospital. Benjamin is building political influence. He needs relationships with wealthy, influential people. Instead of just networking randomly, he creates a shared project that attracts the exact people he wants to know and positions him as a community leader. This is the same pattern that Reid Hoffman used to build LinkedIn. He created a platform that made everyone more successful at networking, but because he controlled the platform, he captured the most value. Now, same pattern Elon Musk used with the supercharger network. He created infrastructure that benefits all electric vehicle adoption. But because Tesla controls the network, they capture disproportionate value. Now, Benjamin was doing platform thinking in the 1740s. Now, the scientific method applied to everything. And here's where Franklin becomes absolutely terrifying as an entrepreneur. Most people know about his electrical experiments, his lightning rod inventions, his work with optics and heat. They think of it as separate from his business activities. Wrong. Dead wrong. And this is principle number 6. Apply systematic experimentation to every domain. Now, Benjamin approaches business problems the same way he approaches scientific problems. He forms hypotheses. He designs experiments. He measures results. He iterates based on data. So let me give you an example. The Pennsylvania Gazette is losing subscribers. Instead of just trying random fixes, Benjamin systematically analyzes competing newspaper. He identifies that people want more local news, more practical information, less political preaching. He doesn't just change the content. He systematically tests different approaches. He tracks subscriber numbers. He surveys readers. He optimizes based on feedback. He turns newspaper publishing into a systematic process. The electrical experiments, same methodology, applied to different domain. Benjamin doesn't just play around with electricity. He systematically tests hypotheses about electrical behavior. He designs repeatable experiments. He documents results precisely. He builds on previous findings methodically. But here's the crucial insight. The systematic thinking transfers. The experimental mindset he develops in science makes him a better entrepreneur. The business discipline he develops as an entrepreneur makes him a better scientist. This is what Jeff Bezos does at Amazon. The same systematic, experimental thinking he applies to business operations, he applies to space explorations with Blue Origin. Same brain, different applications. So, the 13 virtues personal operating system design. At age 20, Franklin makes a list of 13 character traits he wants to develop. All right. 1. Temperance. 2. Silence. 3. Order. 4. Resolution. 5. Frugality. 6. Industry. 7. Sincerity. 8. Justice. 9. Moderation. 10. Cleanliness. 11. Tranquility. 12. Chastity. 13. Humility. Now, most people would just put this list on their wall and feel good about their intentions. Benjamin creates a systematic behavior modification program, and this is principle number 7. Systemize personal development like you systemize business operations. This is my favorite one, and you'll understand why. He creates a chart with 13 rows, 1 for each virtue, and 7 columns, 1 for each day of the week. Each week, he focuses on improving one specific virtue. He tracks his failures daily. He records specific instances where he fell short. But here's the genius move. He doesn't try to improve all 13 virtues simultaneously. He focused on one at a time for an entire week. Then he rotates. This means he cycles through the complete system 4 times per year for his entire adult life. This is systematic habit formation 200 years before James Clear wrote Atomic Habits. This is behavioral engineering before the Atomic Habits book. Now, the physics are identical to what top entrepreneurs do today. They don't just want to be better. They create systematic processes for improvement. They track metrics. They iterate based on results. Look at Jerry Seinfeld's calendar method for writing. Same system. Pick one improvement target. Track daily performance. Create visible accountability. Maintain consistency over time. Look at Benjamin Horowitz's systematic approach to CEO development at Andreessen Horowitz. Same physics. Identify specific capabilities. Create systematic improvement processes. Track progress methodically. Franklin built this system for himself in 1726. He used it for the rest of his life. Now, when Franklin goes to France as American ambassador, he's representing a broke, rebellious collection of colonies that have no international credibility. He needs to convince the most sophisticated court in Europe to support a revolution against their traditional ally. This should be impossible. Benjamin makes it look easy. Principle number 8. The systematic preparation creates an appearance of natural talent. Benjamin doesn't just show up in Versailles and wing it. He systematically studies French culture, French political dynamics, French intellectual interests. He positions himself not as a desperate American begging for help, but as a fascinating philosophical figure who happens to represent American interests. He wears a simple American clothes to court functions where everyone else is wearing elaborate European fashion. This isn't accident. This is positioning. He studied the French intellectual fascination with noble simplicity, and he's systematically leveraging it. He hosts salons where he demonstrates electrical experiments. He's not showing off. He's systematically building relationships with influential French intellectuals who will advocate for American support. He publishes papers on American economic potential. He's not just making random arguments. He's systematically addressing every French concern about supporting American independence. The result? France provides the military and financial support that makes American independence possible. This is the same systematic approach that Brian Chesky used when Airbnb was struggling. He didn't just try harder. He systematically studied the companies he wanted to emulate. He systematically analyzed user behavior. He systematically tested different approaches until he found ones that worked. Same physics, different century. Once you understand these principles, you can apply it throughout any time. Now, the algorithm, Franklin's 8-point operating system. Let me give you the systematic framework that Franklin used to dominate every domain he entered. Pay attention. The Franklin algorithm for systematic success. 1. Systematic learning. Before entering any domain, systematically study existing approaches. Don't just learn skills. Reverse engineer systems. Number 2, constraint conversion. When you encounter limitations, systematically analyze them for hidden advantages. Every constraint contains a potential competitive edge. Number 3, process optimization. Don't just do the work. Systematically improve how the work gets done. Optimize for speed, quality, and consistency. Number 4, value chain integration. Don't just participate in markets. Systematically capture more of the value chain through vertical integration. Number 5, network infrastructure. Don't just network. Create systematic infrastructure that makes everyone else more successful while positioning you at the center. Number 6, experimental methodology. Apply scientific, not systematic, scientific thinking to business problems. Form hypotheses. Design experiments, measure results, iterate based on data. Number 7, personal systems. Develop systematic approaches to personal improvement. Track metrics. Focus on one variable at a time. Maintain consistency. Number 8, systematic preparation. Before major opportunities, systematically study all relevant variables. Preparation creates appearance of natural talent. This is the algorithm. This is how Franklin dominated printing, science, diplomacy, politics, and civic organization. Different applications, same systematic approach. Now, by 1750s, Benjamin has built a systematic dominance in business and science. Now he wants political influence, but instead of just running for office, or lobbying randomly. He creates systematic political infrastructure. This is where Principle 9 comes in. Build systems that generate influence automatically. Franklin starts by systematically mapping Pennsylvania political dynamics. Who makes decisions? What do they care about? How do they currently get information? Where are the inefficiencies? He identifies the Pennsylvania Assembly lacks systematic information about colonial affairs. Instead of just complaining about bad decisions, he positions himself as a systematic solution. He creates regular communication systems with other colonial leaders. He systematically documents economic and political developments. He makes himself the best informed person in Pennsylvania about intercolonial affairs. When the assembly needs expertise, Benjamin is the obvious choice. When they need representation in London, Benjamin is the systematic choice. When they need someone to negotiate with other colonies, Benjamin is the prepared choice. This isn't accident. This isn't luck. This is positioning. It's the same thing that Mark Benioff did before starting Salesforce. He didn't just decide to compete with existing CRM companies. He studied enterprise software trends. He positioned himself as an expert in cloud computing before most people understood the concept. When the market was ready for his solution, he was the obvious choice to lead it. Now, Benjamin spent nearly 2 decades in London as American colonial representative. Most people think he's just lobbying for American interests. That's surface level. Ben is running systematic intelligence operations. This is principle number 10. Information asymmetry, just like the podcast name, Asymmetry, is the ultimate competitive advantage. And if you haven't already, subscribe and like. All right. Ben systematically cultivates relationships with British politicians, merchants, intellectuals, and military leaders. But he's not just networking. He's systematically gathering information about British political dynamics, economic pressures, and strategic thinking. He knows what the British government is planning before most British officials know. He understands British economic constraints better than most British economists. He has systematic insight into British military capabilities and political divisions. When American resistance to British policies begins, Ben isn't reacting to events. He's systematically prepared for what's coming because he's been gathering intelligence for decades. This is identical to what Jeff Bezos did before launching AWS. He wasn't just building Amazon internal infrastructure, he was systematically studying enterprise computing needs, identifying market inefficiencies, and positioning Amazon to serve markets that didn't yet fully exist. Same pattern. Systematic information gathering creates systematic competitive advantage. Now, Benjamin is 81 years old when the Constitutional Convention convenes in Philadelphia. He's the oldest delegate by far. Most people would expect him to be a ceremonial figure, maybe offering occasional wisdom. Benjamin becomes a systematic dealmaker who saves the entire project. Now, this is principle 11. Systematic compromise creates a win-win solution. So what does that mean? Well, the convention is deadlocked. Large states want representation based on population. Small states want equal representation. Everyone has a reason for their position. No one is willing to compromise. But Ben analyzes the underlying interests of each faction. Large states want to ensure their economic power translates to political power. Small states want to ensure they're not dominated by large states. Both fears are legitimate. But Benjamin proposes the Connecticut Compromise. proportional representation in the House, equal representation in the Senate, and isn't just splitting the difference. This is a solution designed that addresses everyone's core concerns. But here's the crucial insight. Benjamin can engineer this compromise because he's maintained relationships with delegates from every state. He studied their concerns. He positioned himself as someone who cares about the overall project success, not just factional advantage. This is the same systematic approach that Steve Jobs used in his product development meetings. He didn't just mediate between engineering and design. He understood the constraints and objectives of every function, then engineered solutions that optimize for the overall product success. Now, the mantra returns. Investment in knowledge. Remember our defining principle that I talked about in the beginning? We're circling back to that. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And that's so important that I have to repeat that again. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Now say it with me, because repetition is the mother of all skill and the father of all learning. So say with me. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Now you can see how this played out across Benjamin's entire career. Every systematic learning effort generated compound returns. Every systematic relationship building created new opportunities. Every systematic process improvement created competitive advantage. The printing knowledge he acquired as an apprentice enabled his business success. The business success enabled his scientific experiments. The scientific reputation enabled his diplomatic effectiveness. The diplomatic experience enabled his political influence. Each investment in systematic knowledge created platforms for the next investment. And this is why Benjamin could dominate multiple domains that seemed completely unrelated. They weren't unrelated. They were systematic applications of the same fundamental approach. Invest systematically in knowledge, build systems that generate leverage, maintain experimental thinking across all domains. Now, Benjamin's last major project is systematic. He's 82 years old, but he's not just coasting on his reputation. He's documenting his life and methods for future entrepreneurs. His autobiography isn't just storytelling. It's systematic knowledge transfer. He's deliberately sharing the thinking frameworks and systematic approaches that enabled his success. But here's what most people miss. Benjamin designs his autobiography as a systematic influence tool. He knows it will be widely read. He knows it will influence how Americans think about success, improvement, and systematic thinking. He's programming future generations of entrepreneurs. The autobiography becomes one of the most influential business books in American history. Dale Carnegie cites it. Napoleon Hill cites it. Modern entrepreneurs still reference it. This is systematic legacy building. Franklin is creating systems that will generate influence and impact long after his death. It's the same thing that Ray Dalio did with Principles. He didn't just document his investment philosophy. He systematically shared his thinking framework so other entrepreneurs could apply similar approaches. Now, let me give you the complete Benjamin Franklin algorithm. The systematic framework he used to build extraordinary success across multiple domains. Phase 1, okay? Systematic foundation building. Reverse engineer excellence. Before entering any domain, Systematically study best practitioners. Don't just learn their skills, understand their thinking systems. Number two, systematic skill development. Create systematic practice routines. Track progress metrics. Focus on one improvement at a time. Maintain consistency over time. Constraint analysis. Identify limitations in current approaches. For every constraint contains potential competitive advantages for systematic thinkers. Phase 2. Systematic competitive positioning. Process innovation. Don't just participate in existing markets. Innovate superior processes. Compete on reliability and speed, not just price. Value chain integration. Capture more value by expanding your control of critical business processes. Number 6, network infrastructure. Create platforms that make others more successful while positioning you at the center of value creation. Phase 3, systematic expansion. Systematic scaling, well, you got to build systems that generate value without requiring your direct involvement. Train others in your methods and maintain partial ownership of their implementation. Information asymmetry. Gather information about market dynamics, competitor strategies, and emerging opportunities. Information advantages create systematic competitive advantages. Experimental methodology. Apply scientific thinking to business problems. Form hypotheses. Design experiments. Measure results. Iterate based on data. Phase 4, which is systematic influence preparation. Before major opportunities, study all relevant variables. Preparation creates the appearance of natural talent. 11. Relationship building. Don't just network randomly. Systematically cultivate relationships with people who share your long-term interests. 12. Legacy building. Document your methods and thinking frameworks. Create systems that will generate influence beyond your direct involvement. This is the complete system. 12 systematic principles that Franklin used to dominate every domain he entered. Modern applications and how people use Franklin's algorithm. While Jeff Bezos and Amazon, if you look, systematic customer obsession, long-term thinking, process innovation, same Franklin algorithm applied to e-commerce and cloud computing. If you look at Elon Musk, systematic first principles thinking, vertical integration, experimental methodology. Same Franklin's physics applied to electric vehicles and space exploration. Now, this is what I wrote in my book. After a few days of studying Benjamin's systematic approach to everything, here's what I wrote in my notebook as the final takeaway. Franklin didn't just get lucky. He didn't just work hard. He systematically engineered luck. Every fortunate opportunity in Benjamin's life was the result of preparation. Not just any preparation, systematic preparation. Every natural talent was the result of development. Every coincidental connection was a result of systematic relationship building. He was very intentional about everything. The most successful entrepreneurs don't just respond to opportunities. They create conditions where opportunities find them. Benjamin Franklin built systematic learning engines that generated compound knowledge advantages. He built relationship engines that generated compound network effects. He built businesses engines that generated compound financial returns. And most importantly, he transferred these capabilities across domains. The thinking he developed in printing made him a better scientist. The experimental methodology he developed in a science made him a better diplomat. The systematic relationship building he developed in business made him a better politician. And this is what separates extraordinary entrepreneurs from ordinary ones. Ordinary entrepreneurs get good at one thing, extraordinary extraordinary entrepreneurs develop systematic capabilities that transfer across multiple domains. Now, a final reminder, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. But now you understand this isn't just about reading books or taking classes. This is about systematic knowledge acquisition that generates compound advantages across everything you build. And if you want that competitive advantage, if you want the systematic knowledge acquisition, subscribe now and hit the bell button. Closing thoughts. Well, Franklin died at 84, which was ancient for 18th century, but age isn't what made his life extraordinary. His systematic impact is what made his life extraordinary. Benjamin contributed to every domain he entered. He advanced scientific knowledge. He built business innovations that created wealth for thousands of people. He helped create political systems that enabled human flourishing. He demonstrated that thinking could generate extraordinary results across completely different fields. Most people live specialized lives. They get good at one thing and they stay in their lane. Benjamin lived a systematically integrated life. Every domain informed every other domain. Every capability transferred to new applications. This is the example of modern entrepreneurs. Don't just build companies. Systematically develop capabilities that transfer across multiple domains. Don't just create wealth. Create knowledge, relationships, and systems that generate compound returns across everything you touch. Benjamin Franklin proved that systematic thinking is the ultimate leverage. One person applying systematic methods consistently over decades can influence science, business, politics, and culture simultaneously. The final lesson isn't about Benjamin Franklin. The final lesson is about the power of systematic thinking to create extraordinary results in any era, any domain, and any circumstance. Remember, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. That's Benjamin Franklin's algorithm. That's the systematic approach to building companies, building knowledge, and building a life worth living. Now go out there, build some systems. If you enjoy this, I want you to hit like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and share on X. See you next time. Peace.